Yo, what's up guys? This is Characters with the Grinder School short. Covering today a topic recently posted just today actually, in fact, the 11th of December when I'm recording this video by Grinder School member Sarsant, whatever the pronunciation is of that. So he's made a very good post here actually about two types of spot. The first of which I'm going to be covering in this video, and the second one I'm going to be covering in the next one. I don't have any exact example hands here because this is a short. If I restrict this to examples, I'm only going to be able to use one example, maybe two, and the detail won't be great. So what we're going to do is go over it in a more general sense and talk about the theory behind this and the factors we need to think about in these spots, because I think that's going to be more important to get a head around how to deal with this sort of thing. So the first type of spot that the poster has referred to here is a sort of situation where you've got a board progressively getting worse, getting scarier. You've started off with a value hand, say you've got like top pair, top kicker or something, you bet the flop for value, the turn's kind of nasty, or the river's kind of nasty. Changes the board texture, changes your relative hand strength, it makes your hand less strong in the face of what villain could possibly have. It makes villain less likely to call on things. So what we're going to talk about here is how this changes our line, and the first thing to think about is what's actually changing here. Like what is changing about the way that villain is playing his range, such that we need to adapt our line. On a dry run out, we're going to go bet for value with, say, top pair, top kicker. So say one of the examples used here is that a flush card comes on the turn, right? So if this happens, say the board's like king 7-3. Okay, let's make it a bit scarier than that. Let's say it's like king jack 5, and we have ace king, and the 9 of flush card, the 9 of hearts, say it's a two-tone heart flop, comes on the turn. So it obviously affects our line here to some extent. First of all, what it's going to do is it's going to make villain less likely to call bets with his sort of second pair hands, his weak top pair hands. The amount of worse hands that we can extract 3 streets of value from has been shrunk. So what that means is that betting for value becomes thinner, and it may be the case that we can't do it at all. It depends on the villain. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but that's the first point, is that villain's calling range is going to shrink. Okay, I'm going to assume that we're out of position here in these spots, so that check calling, check folding things are options. So if we bet, we need to work out what hands he's going to call us with. Usually in these spots we should just be betting as default, but it depends on villain. Obviously I can't say always do this. Doesn't work like that in poker. But in these spots on the turn, there'll be a lot of hands that villain will call again with, like second pair with a flush card. Remember, all these hands sort of pocket pair, good pocket pair with a flush draw, sort of Broadway hand that's made second pair with a flush draw, top pair with a flush draw, worst top pairs. All these hands still aren't folding, and always remember in poker that it's much easier combinatorially. I love that word. With combinations of hands, it's a lot easier to make, second pair with a flush draw or a top pair than it is to have a flush. There are very few combos of flushes in relation to these combos of weaker hands that, at micros especially, people don't want to let go of. They have a pair and a draw. They have a two-fold hand. They have two things going on. A lot of these hands aren't going to fold. So usually against your more stationary opponents, and this is the other point, that at micro stakes opponents, generally their calling ranges are wider than their betting ranges. So we just want them to be calling and expect them to do so with worse. So top pair, top kicker isn't sort of redundant on a turn, on a flush card turn necessarily. If it's a 4 straight turn or something, then yeah, like say you have ace king, flop comes down, say we have ace queen and the flop comes down queen jack 10, and then a 9 comes on the turn. Like, our hand is obviously just turned from a sort of marginal value betting hand to utter crap. In that situation, perhaps we just want to check fold, because 2 pair won't fold, straights won't fold. There's so many straights. And that's one situation where we have an exception to that rule I just talked about, where I said it's easier to make weaker hands and stronger hands. On 4 straight boards, it's exceedingly easy to make straights, and that's an exception. Same with 4 flush boards, because all you need is one of the card. But when it's only 3 to a straight, 3 to a flush, and it's sort of semi-scary, it's usually going to be the case that your opponent has enough worse hands in his range that you can still sort of bet fold. And obviously bet fold, because if raised it becomes very, very strong, the range we're up against here. One of the replies here is that bet folding is your friend on nasty boards. This is true. However, the original poster correctly points out that there are many times when we can't actually bet for value, so why should we bet? I'd say that if it's break even to bet, then we should do it, because by checking and check folding or check calling, we're likely more likely to make a mistake if we don't have a good read. But if it's clearly negative EV to bet by a decent amount, or even just a reasonable amount, then we shouldn't be betting, because we're only getting called by mainly worse hands. It's negative EV when that bet goes in. When the bet doesn't go in, we just win the hand. Most of the time when villain has a worse hand, he folds, but we get the showdown against that anyway by checking. So check fold becomes more the case in those sort of latter examples, like in that 4 straight board. Say we know villain's a big passive fish, and he's going to have a lot of hands like on the Queen Jack 10-9 board, he's going to have a lot of hands like Queen 3 offsuit and all these worse hands that, you know, were going to call us down before, but now they're not. But he's so passive, he's not going to turn them into bluffs or anything. I mean, people don't turn hands into bluffs at micros, so against that guy, just check folding the turn's good. On the slightly less scary board against this guy, we just want to be betting. Even though it got a bit scarier, there's still plenty of value to be had. And the other example given here was when the bottom card pairs. Basically, like, or the middle card pairs or whatever, say it's King Jack 6. This is the sort of situation I think he's getting at, and the turn's a Jack, and we have like King Queen. What's that done, that Jack turn? So think about combinations of hands again. It's made it less likely that he has a Jack. However, the fact that we have a King also makes it less likely that he has a King. So it's improved sort of, it's made it as likely he has a Jack as he has a King if he plays the same amount of each pre-flop, which a lot of people will, roughly. It's also made it less likely that we have a Jack. When that card pairs, if villain is stationary, we can go ahead and bet again for sure. He's going to have, against most people, we can just bet again in these sort of spots. Folding to raises again, bet folding, and expect that a lot of stationary villains, when the card pairs, they want to call down with any 2-pair hand. Basically, they have 2-pair now. You know, if they have a pocket pair, they're probably not going to fold. People that calls down with gut shots, opening straight draws and things as well, for sure. But if our opponent is tight, and you know, say we just know he doesn't play much King X, he plays like suited Queen Jack suited, sort of Jack 10 suited and things like that, and he's 3-betting Ace King, King Queen, and not flatting any other kings, and in this sort of case like that, then we can just check fold, because he'll check back with the worst pocket pairs he's going to be folding if we bet, and he's going to be betting with the jacks, the trips that make up a big part of his range. So that's like a very sort of general overview of these kind of spots. One last thing I want to state about this is that when the board gets scary, a very common mistake that people make is they tend to go into check call mode on the river, or even on the turn, for no real reason. Like say, flush card comes down in the river, they were betting top pair for value. So what's happened here, let's recap. Villain's betting range has shrunk, and his calling range has also shrunk. So his betting range has shrunk in the sense that he's not going to be betting as many worse hands on that river. On a blank river, he may bluff misdraws. He may value bet top pair. On that kind of river, flush card river, he's going to be checking back and taking a showdown with all these hands, or his draws will have turned into flushes, so he'll be just betting with better hands, basically. So that means that check calling becomes the absolute worst thing we can do, because his betting range, all the worst hands are gone from it. He just isn't betting anything worse on that scare card river. So if we check, we should check fold. However, maybe it's the case that sometimes he just makes a random bet with second pair, then we fold the best hand. And it's also the case that when we bet the river, we have, you know, sort of 50% against his continuing range. In that case, we should always just bet, because we never want to be check folding a spot that we can just bet and be break even in, because it basically eliminates the potential for us to make any mistakes. And it could be the case that, you know, he's going to call with a whole bunch of worse top pair still. You know, it's harder to make a flush, etc. So it could be the case that we can just bet again for value, like very comfortably, and bet fold. So just my final point is just ignore the try to avoid the trap of going into automatic check mode, and this is something the poster's talking about here. Don't go into automatic check mode, and don't just check call because you're afraid you can't value bet but you don't want to fold. That's basically like, it makes no sense, it's awful, it's terrible, don't do it. If I can leave you with one thought about this topic, it would certainly be that. But just remember, think about your opponent type. What has happened to his calling range now? Is he still calling with enough hands? Play about with Poker Stove, plug in some ranges and see how your equity changes against these ranges. I mean, I can do this in a future video if you want. Just let me know on this thread or the video thread or whatever. That's cool. And avoid that trap of going into check call, don't know what else to do mode. And if you've got any questions or comments, leave them here and or on the original thread, and I'll be happy to go and elaborate a little bit more, because I realise it's a condensed video. So on my next Grinder School short, when that comes out, I'll be talking about this next spot where we play second or third pair against aggressive villains. So until then, good luck at the tables, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks.